I was recently back in my hometown of Lebanon, Connecticut, and while I was there, I stopped by Liberty Hill Cemetery. As you'll see, a lot of the graves aren't in great shape at all, but the ones I was there to see in particular are at least better than the rest by quite a bit. Today, we're going to talk about Captain Sluman Gray. He was a very wealthy whaling ship captain from Lebanon. Him and his wife Sarah had 8 children, 5 of which died at a very early age. Before the age of 3 is what you generally hear. His house still stands in Lebanon, as you'll see in the picture coming up. And what's interesting about Captain Gray's story is on March 24th of 1865, Captain Gray died after about 2 days of illness on board of his whaling ship, the James Murray. They were about 400 miles off the coast of Guam at the time. And he died of what Sarah later described as an inflammation of the bowels. And that could be a lot of things. So, unfortunately, we don't know his exact cause of death. But Sarah was determined for him to not have a burial at sea and to be brought back to Lebanon to be buried. So she insisted that the crew take his body, put him in a barrel, and fill it with what the ship log described as spirits, but it's commonly called rum. So we don't actually know it's rum, but the lore is he's buried in a barrel of rum. There is also a false story that he was killed by members of the Shenandoah, which was a Confederate ship, but it was actually about 2 months after he died that the James Murray met up with the Shenandoah, and they were actually spared because of Sarah and the children there, which was interesting because the crew was not a fan of Sarah by any means, which could just be because they were superstitious about a woman being on board, but local legend is that she was not an easy woman to deal with at all. And actually, Captain Gray might not have been easy to deal with himself, according to some of the accounts I've heard. So keep in mind, they were 400 miles off the coast of Guam. They still had to get Sarah and the children all the way back to Connecticut. They, at some point, kind of dropped her off and let her get back home, which she did eventually. And Captain Gray was buried, barrel and all, in the Liberty Hill Cemetery. Now, it was not uncommon for children to die at an early age during this time period, but to have 5 children die before the age of 3 would have been. There were no outbreaks of yellow fever or typhoid or anything like that, and they died at all different times as well. What I have heard from local legend, which I have not been able to substantiate at all, is that the children died because of Sarah's cooking. Apparently, she was not big into food safety, and they might have died from food poisoning. So, whether or not Sarah's cooking caused the death of her children, we don't know at all. But this is a picture of Sarah and one of the babies. So, that is the story of the man buried in the barrel of rum in Liberty Hill Cemetery in Lebanon, Connecticut.